This projects above one of the cities under the sea with an observation platform and a landing platform on the upper deck. At the sea level, there'll be a floating dock system that moves with the tide up and down so boats can dock. Then you enter an elevator shaft which goes through an airlock. It takes you to the bottom of the sea or the seabed. The seabed is used for observation of reefs and marine life. Not only do they monitor the reefs, they restore the reefs and change them, rebuild them, or redesign them. Someday we'll be able to control the shape, configuration of reefs so they can support more marine life. I think humans can add to nature and improve it considerably. What will that mean? It'll mean a higher standard of living for all people.
When he draws these buildings and designs, he thinks about how they go together, how they're manufactured. Some of the drawings I have seen have gone back about 60 years, and they're just beginning to talk about some of these things now as being a possibility. You know, in the past, people would say, you'd never be able to get to the moon, not in 1,000 years. And they'd look up the next day and they're going to the moon. You know, when I first met Jacques 25 years ago and he would talk to some people about certain inventions, they'd say, you won't see that, not in 1,000 years. And 10 years later, they come out with it on the cover of Popular Science. The whole basis of the technology is to maintain a high standard of living. Technology is not worth anything unless it improves people's lives. Today, people are afraid of science and technology because it's so abusive today in so many ways. But it's not science and it's not the technology we should be wary of. It's the abuse and the misuse of science. You can take a rocket and you can shoot it into outer space and explore outer space, or you can take it and use it as a bomb and destroy another country. It's really the inanimate object really is in our hands and what we do with it.
Science is really the ability to predict the next most probable. That's what the real meaning of science is. Gaining the ability to predict the next most probable. When we talk about science, we're talking about a method of looking at a situation, a method of evaluation that differs from the opinionated system. If you ask me, I'll tell you. The scientific method has no special connection to truth. It really has a better way of looking at things than the earlier systems, which everything was attributed to gods or demons.
This is where we get into applying the scientific method to society.
Yes. Now, this is not in the book yet. The scientific method applied to society is something people don't think about much. But if you want to know where the answers may lie, it is in the application of the methods of science with human concern and environmental concern. The future by design refers to the application of the methods of science, not scientists, the methods of science to the social system. Naturally, even the methods of science undergo change, and as they change, so would the future. If we use the scientific method throughout the world, the probability of war drops to zero. The probability of human suffering disappears. Deprivation, poverty, crime, all those things tend to disappear because there's no basis for it.
Jacques spent a lot of time before studying people. He started studying how animals behave and how to change the behavior of animals or predict the behavior of animals. And it came to the conclusion that it's really the environment that changes behavior and enables us to behave the way we do. We're not born with prejudice and bigotry and anger and greed. It's really generated and nurtured by the environment that we live in. That's why we feel that unless you change your environment and change the experiences, we'll get the same aberrant behavior within people unless the environment is changed.
Any culture in the world today tries to educate people so they'll serve a function in that particular culture. In other words, if you're brought up in a Nazi culture, the flag waving and the swastika are the kind of things they put forth. If you're brought up in a primitive tribe, handling the javelin, the bow and arrow would be the kind of thing that you're exposed to. So people are conditioned to serve the interests of an established culture. Who does that to us? The owners of the institutions, the establishment. So they give us a value system that would support existing structures, whether it be religious, non-religious, industrial, military. When children say, you know, Daddy, what's the greatest country in the world? Of course our country is the greatest country in the world. Which God is the right God, Daddy? Our God. All the other gods are false gods. So picture this, a Roman family taking its kids to see the Christians being fed to the lions. And the kids are watching. Dad, can we come next week to see Christians being fed to lions? Are these kids sick? No. Their value system is distorted. So I'm strictly concerned with the environment that people are reared in, raised in. And if that environment is altered, so will behavior be altered. You reorient the environment, that in turn reorients people. But if you reorient people without touching the environment, it'll slip back. So when you try to think about the future, remember this. The process with which you think about things is based upon indoctrination, what you're given by your society. So your range of thought is limited by the dominant values of your society. So learning to be flexible in values takes a long time. And in talking to kids when I was very young, I had to be very patient with them if I were to make any progress. I talked about the concept of God. Your concept of God, my concept of God, and his concept of God, so different. I wonder what God is really like, or if there is a God for that matter. And why would God permit war and disease if he's all loving? It didn't make sense to me. Too many clashes. So I questioned that. Of course, I felt a little uncomfortable during questioning the concept of God. But then reading about the history and evolution of gods, there were many different gods. The god of war, the god of peace, the god of love, which was more like the people that invented them. They behaved, they got angry, they made sacrifices, they created floods when they didn't like the way things were going. And this did not come through as superior intelligence. Primitive people, going back in time, when they saw lightning, they thought that the deity was angry. Why else would it not occur? When a hurricane swept the land, they got rid of certain people in their tribe as a sacrifice, hoping that the gods would not produce a second hurricane. However, if it did occur again, then they sacrificed some of the younger people. Rarely would the chief sacrifice himself. But he's always got a whole line of people ready to sacrifice. So you have that problem with human beings. Anything that occurs beyond their comprehension, they have to invent an excuse for. They have to create gods and demons to account for things, because people come to the leadership of that community. No matter how primitive the tribe, they say, how come bad wind blow people off island? I said, you not behave good. You not make not enough contribution to